Welcome. I'm Seth Stewart. I'm going to be doing a little presentation on how we can secure our elections, both in the state of Utah and nationally. Please pardon for the delays getting started here. There was another group in this room. It took a while to clear out. So we're good now. We're set up. Let me do a quick audio check. And yep, we got audio coming through. Okay. Great. Well, without further ado, let me go ahead and I have just a little slide deck prepared here, and we're going to go through that. And then if you have any questions, if you're online on the stream or through the Zoom link, I would appreciate you sending your questions through there. So here we go. Let me go ahead and share the screen here. It's showing up. Okay, bear with me. It's going to work. Screen sharing has failed to start. Second. Okay. All right. I'll be right back. That's not good. Yeah, is that gonna work? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. So just make sure this is working now. Do a quick screen check. Yeah, it's got me up in the corner there. Oh, there's a way to try to force that. I think it's the show meeting button. That's what it is, I think. Okay. All right. So without further ado, going to just do a deep dive for a few minutes on what's wrong with our elections and how the Constitution will help us address those problems. So I don't think it's too controversial to say that we want our elections to be secure. There have been a number of allegations about insecure elections, and there have been a lot of well, Republicans and Doge with Elon Musk and others who have asserted that there was fraud in various of our elections. And whether we have some number of illegal immigrants, for example, voting in our elections or other fraudulent activities at the ballot, I'm actually going to be exposing a fraud that is like at least 1,000 times that, because it's not just in the tactical stuff that fraud occurs in elections. You can actually have election fraud when the game itself is changed. Joseph Stalin is quoted as saying by one of his closest aides that I don't care who votes in our elections or how, but what I care very much is who counts the votes and how. And so there's this myth basically that things are safe in the government's hands. We're going to look at some of these strategic manipulations that have been used in our voting methods, and they're nowhere near as intact or secure as we've been led to think. And one of the most common misconceptions taught in classrooms is that because there's separation of powers, that therefore there will be checks and balances. But that's a non sequitur. The separation of powers is an essential part of checks and balances, but the very fact of separating powers does not in any way guarantee by itself that there will be checks and balances that are effective. So as an example here, I know of this bank robber gang, and they're very principled. So they subscribe to the division of responsibilities. And so you have one bank robber who's assigned to be the safecracker, and others to look out for cops, and a third one is the getaway driver. And therefore, I guarantee that they won't rob any banks. Do you believe that argument? I don't. And this is why the founding fathers understood that in order to have a true representative republic, a democratic republic, you need to have uh, different representation methods in your government. I can try to uh, state that as follows. So James Madison said that ambition needs to be made to counter rival ambition. And that's what the separation of different election methods would entail. You have these three different pillars in the Constitution. You have indirect election methods, which are provided for in Article 2, Section 1. That's the Electoral College. It's a delegated election. And in Federalist Number 68, you have the reasons expounded for that, that delegates are more discerning. It requires more vetting for the office, the highest office in the land. Legislative elections for the Senate, because you want your senators to be representative of the states themselves as a whole, rather than the popular will within those states. Those are two different things. And then, so it's also an indirect form of election because the legislators themselves in the state were previously elected. And so you get more refinement and deliberation there. And then the House of Representatives, that's Article 1, Section 2, is meant to be elected through direct popular vote. And these three methods ensure that each of the officers in these various segments of the government will actually have different motivations. So that's how you impose rival ambitions on the government so that they don't just all collapse into a uniparty, which is what we have today, because every vote in our elections today, every elected representative today at the state and national level that I'm aware of is elected through a direct popular vote. But popular vote general elections, except in House of Representatives cases, and primary elections, which are also done typically by a direct popular vote, are not original to our election methods under the Constitution. So we need to understand the principles at work here if we're going to have any success at restoring our original independent and diversified election methods and push back the uniparty. Uh, so Federalist number 47 says the accumulation of all powers into one group are the very definition of tyranny. So if you have every member of your government is elected using the exact same mode, then you have a collapse. This is also described in Federalist number 10, where James Madison proposes what I'm calling the representative spectrum, which is very different from our political ideological spectrum of today, which we inherited that from the French Revolution, not from the American Revolution. So we need to have a deeper understanding of that as well. Now, in the state of Utah, we got some insight into particularly how this works because I think for the most part, everyone I know of, with very few exceptions, myself included, we grow up under a system where having primaries where you have a popular vote and then general elections where it's also popular vote, and then having the electoral college bound to the popular vote in their respective states for the most part, that's just normal to us. And we'd never hardly even question that just because, well, we're conservatives and we conserve things. Well, what is it we're conserving? In this case, we're conserving a corrupt system that was installed many generations ago. So signature gathering, this is the SB 54 2014 bill that installed a signature gathering nominating petition route to get onto the direct primary ballot. But so it's a pay to play mechanism, and it's a severe disadvantage to any candidate who really wants to actually appeal to real intelligent voters rather than just paying people to show up at people's doorsteps and say, I have 7 packets. I'm going to rattle off this list of names to you, and you just tell me, will you please sign for each of them? And I'm like, I don't even know those people. Are you even going to tell me anything about them? So signature gathering is a non-competitive method that's designed to oust the champion from an actual competitive election method, namely the caucus and convention. And I've called it Republican here because, well, not only does the Republican Party still do a caucus and convention, but it is also a more Republican type of election method. So it's a red method. It's an indirect method. And that's why we like it. That's why it's good. It's not just because signature gathering bad. It's because having delegates actually show up in person to vet the candidates to where they can't just hide from you is the essence of Republican government. If you have transparency, if you have bidirectional communication and accountability between your representatives and the represented, then that is a Republican government. If you have people just going around spending money to gather signatures for people's names who they barely recognize, that is more of tyranny by mobocracy. And that's what the direct primary is. Very few Utah voters realize this, but the direct primary is not original to Utah's election systems. In fact, it was installed in the early 1900s by none other than the National Progressive Movement. And there's a very specific reason why they installed it. It's to displace the Republican candidates and replace them with the state's favored picks that are more blue slash left leaning ideologically. And you can see this doesn't belong here. Like, why would you override the delegate's choice? Well, we've been sold this lie for generations that we need to have multi-stage elections as kind of but you got that one stage, but now we need to like narrow the field and stuff, which narrowing the field reduces the ideological diversity. It reduces the flow of information between voters and the candidates. And we've just been sold this lie that our brains are so small that we can't possibly think about any other contest at a given time than like Democrat versus Republican. And so that's why there's this funnel that just always goes to that. And they'll just act like, sorry, they're just like sock puppets at that point, because then if you can reduce a candidate just down to a partisan label, then you're not actually thinking about their politics. You're not actually thinking about their character. And those labels can become wildly detached from the actual character of the individuals. We saw this in 2024, where 3 state and national candidates for those offices, including the governor's race, including the national Senate, and including the state attorney general, the convention nominees who won by a landslide didn't even appear on the general election ballot because of signature gathering and the direct primary. And the Count My Vote movement has been very critical of the caucus, claiming that delegates don't, that they're out of touch with the general electorate. That's a very misleading claim. They're claiming it because the outcome of a direct primary is different from the outcome of the convention. But the founding fathers understood that that's a feature, not a bug. If you have voters who can actually gain access to the candidates and show up to their events, their meet and greets, go ask them their questions in person, as opposed to lazy voters, sorry, who are spoon-fed narratives over the media and propaganda and TV ads and mailers and billboards and stuff, and just party alignment or party affiliation, rather, just a little sticker, the endorsement and name recognition. Then campaign spending wins, and it's just money wins. This is one of the reasons why you'll want to tune in tonight about the Federal Reserve, because that's been one of the primary drivers of the corruption of our elections. Because if you can have this quantitative easing and these liquid injections to goodness knows where, to these unaccountable organizations and commissions and so on that were created for some ostensible purpose that sounds official, but they're actually channeling money towards their preferred candidates through super PACs and so on, then you're not having elections anymore. You're just having your money stolen from you through the Federal Reserve, and then you have these really low information voters, which are really easy to win over with the partisan narrative, this dialectic, and then it's just you get rid of all the good candidates basically before the general election even occurs. So that's one of the huge pernicious things that's happening here. It's a filtration process to throw good candidates down the trap door before they even reach the general public, so that the general public doesn't even know they're there, and they can't even consider those questions seriously. So this is something I refer to actually as vote laundering, because SB 54, with this trigger, the voters voted red. They voted for a Republican candidate like Phil Lyman. And then you just add this SB 54 detergent. Somebody spends, $100,000, $200,000 of their nice, easy, super PAC donor money. Goodness knows, could have come from out of state, could have come from outside of our country even. And then voila, poof, they outspent their opposition in the primary, and voila, now they're the Republican nominee. And this is how we get rhinos. This is the rhino machine. And until we understand how this works, we're not going to understand how to stop the rhinos from getting elected. This is not about attacking any individual's character or anything. This is just how this process works by design. And the founding fathers showed us how to get rid of it. So I'm going to show this panel on the left here. This is titled Checks and Balances in the Lawmaking Process. There's this big sturdy wooden door, and it's got these locks on it. It represents how difficult it should be, according to the founding fathers, according to our own Constitution, to get any laws passed, because laws are very impactful. They can cause a lot of damage. So you have to be very careful in that process. And so I have these 3 different colored locks on this door, and each one requires a different colored and different shaped key to unlock it. And that's how you guarantee that there's an actual check. You can't just have, that consolidation of power, that tyranny, to where you just have one easy access to be able to just say one person agrees, one person said so. There's this directive from the supreme ruler, therefore this is the new law of the land. You have to get all 3 of these groups to agree, and this is where they are in the Constitution. Article 2, Section 1, that's the Electoral College for the president. That's a delegated election. He's accountable to the delegates. He's not accountable to a popular vote, and that's by design, because the delegates are more discerning than the general public is. With the Senate, I call them ultra-Republicans because they're elected through a doubly indirect route, that is through their state legislatures, and many state legislators should have been elected through an indirect method as well, if they were to apply these same principles at the state level. And that's what would solve SB 54, by the way, is you apply these exact same principles, this differentiation of election methods for different offices at the state level. That's how you get rid of SB 54. That's the solution. Because it gives the count my vote people their blue sandbox, which would be the House of Representatives at the state level. It's also at the national level. Those are through a direct popular vote. So if you want to have popular vote elections, the House of Representatives is your place to go. That's what makes them different from senators, is because you have popular vote representation versus statewide representation. And the state level analog to that would be to have something like a group of you have all of your municipal officers, your city council members and mayors perhaps vote for their respective state senators, and the municipal mayors could be elected through an indirect election, since they're executive officers, just like the president. And the governor and lieutenant governor could be elected through an indirect, that is a delegated election. What that would look like is you would have a caucus and convention, and then whatever the convention delegates, whoever they choose to be governor and lieutenant governor, that's who your governor and lieutenant governor are. It's that simple. That's how the Electoral College was originally designed, to use an indirect election of that kind for the highest office in the land, and it's because the delegates are more discerning. And then you wouldn't have this post-filter stage of the Democratic direct primary overruling that, and then yeah, another third stage of a direct popular vote in a general election against a dummy Democrat or something like that, just for good measure, to make sure the people think that they're being served and think that their interests are being protected when in fact they're not. So by restoring these three independent election methods, you have to get all three of these groups. In the majority of cases, vast majority of cases, all three need to substantially agree that this is a good idea before it can become a law, because this is what enforces true bicameralism. And so the 17th Amendment in the United States government got rid of the legislative elections for the Senate and made them direct popular vote. So those are all blue now. So you have the House, which was blue to begin with. The Senate became blue with the 17th Amendment. And it was sold to the people on the argument that it's going to improve our representation, which it does not, because now the states have no say. Instead, it's just a popular vote. And if you don't like national popular vote, if you don't want California or whoever outweighing your voice, then you should be concerned about this. And the president's office, that is also turned blue. The Electoral College national popular vote is already here. I'm going to explain how that happened in just a few minutes here. But so you can see this panel on the left. This is how it used to be, and that's been replaced with these pet doors, one for a donkey, one for an elephant. And now whenever you have a partisan majority across both houses, then they can just ramrod through whatever bad legislation they want, and then the president usually rubber stamps it, and that's how you get bad laws. I added this little nowhere here just to say this is where in our Constitution the party pet doors for lawmaking are authorized. It's not anywhere in the Constitution that's authorized for them to take that power away from us. This is Thomas Jefferson explaining how delegates are experts at vetting candidates, and that they have that responsibility and that proclivity to make a wise selection. They're a body that is favorable to deliberation and more reasonable than the general electorate. So, and I do have a couple of videos here. This is what's wrong with Utah's elections. I can share a link to that. And the disappearing Electoral College, this explains what has happened to the electors in the various states. And I'll summarize it briefly as follows. I have a little cartoon graphic that explain this. I didn't make it in the slides here, but if you're a national delegate to the Electoral College, then when you show up to vote, there's this party boss that's looking over your shoulder, and you fill in whoever you want. But if you vote for a candidate that the party boss didn't want you to vote for, then he tears up your ballot, he fines you $1,000, and then he goes and finds someone else to replace you. You get disqualified from being an elector if you vote in a way that the party boss doesn't agree with. So that's not an election, that's coercion. And so a bound elector is a contradiction in terms, and they're bound to follow the party lines, and they're also bound to mirror the popular vote in most of the states. We have a bound elector law here in the state of Utah. So this is not free and fair elections, and our president has not been chosen according to the wiser deliberation of delegates. Instead, it's just been done by a mad popular vote, by mobocracy, which means every president we've had over the last 150 plus years, ever since these bound elector laws came into place in the majority of the states, every Democrat we've elected has been tongue-tied. Every president we've elected has been a Democrat with a lowercase d, because it's a more democratic method that's used. So what we need to do is we need to repeal the bound elector laws in the states. So restore the real Electoral College, because the Schoolhouse Rock video says it's supposed to be according to the popular vote. That's a lie. This would get rid of tons of election fraud and possibilities for fraud, because elections would be so much less complicated to administer if we were to simplify them in this way. We need to repeal the 17th Amendment and restore the elections of senators to the states. And we need to pass, I have made a legislative proposal here in the state of Utah, which I did call the Restore the Republic Act. And the reason it's called that is because it would actually restore the independent election methods for the different offices of government. It takes these principles, what I call the red, white, and blue election methods for the executive, for the legislature, and for the House of Representatives, respectively, and sorts out our laundry. This is what would solve the contention behind SB 54. My proposal, I believe, addresses all of the concerns that were raised by the Count My Vote movement, as well as you humanly could, given just a broad outline for election methods and so on. So It addresses that. It addresses control by party bosses and so on, because the delegated elections should be nonpartisan. All elections should be nonpartisan. There shouldn't be any law that actually respects an establishment of political partisanship. Because once you have that, then you have the condition from Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. So with that, I would love to hear your questions on this, and I'm gearing up to do another one or possibly a couple of election integrity and security sessions on this. I have some insights on the SAVE Act that a lot of people have not been paying attention to, as well as the centralization uh, of voter registration. So you'll want to tune in for that, and thank you so much. And we'll catch you next time. You'll want to tune in tonight for the How to End the Federal Reserve in Harriman and on this same live stream. Oh, I should figure out the projector and all that. It's like it's not turned on yet, but how do I connect to it? Yeah, it's not saying there's anything else connected. Try a different port. Try another different port. Oh. Well, I don't have a screen for y'all to watch. How are we gonna get it? I know. Yeah, no first screen bigger than one sitting in our hands. Oh, there it is. It's tight. Wiggle that cable. So nobody step into that. Just put a chair in front of it. No way further. Is it better? You go off on us if it's closed? I think it'll be okay, but we'll probably turn down again, but try and see how the output. Good. And this is the other thing. I haven't figured out how to like not mirror. So if I just do stop mirroring, then it's just going to stop. Oh, there we go. Didn't realize that was how that worked. Okay, cool. LibreOffice. LibreOffice, oh, indeed. Okay. And this tab over here. Okay. Gonna mute the tab. And I gotta change which screen I'm sharing. I go into presentation mode. And it's on the wrong screen. Sorry, this stuff takes so long.
I'll clean them. They're clean. I'll give them that. But I feel like but the toilets are connected. So like when someone flushes it, it like vibrates. And then I don't know what it was, but it felt like a bullet. It hit the other side and like bounced me up.
Okay.
Sounds like that I'm mounted well. Like, she knows if they're mounted to the wall or, yeah. Sometimes they get installed around the wall.
Okay. This is being kind of weird to me. I'm like, I've got to change which one's the main display maybe so that I can actually manage it from. I'm new to Mac, my apologies. I've done some presentations for a Mac before, but every time there's something new. I'm just apologizing for my.
Is Bridget one of your experts?
Yeah, look at that. No, none of us are Mac people.
Oh, the Mac is from the library.
No, the Mac is it's my own. I recently switched over to a Mac for purposes of. Oh, come on. Do I really have to make that the main display and like move all my stuff over just to be able to use a window over here? Give me a break. Okay, well then I need to exit out of that one. Then I need to grab my other tabs. Snag them and put them over here, I guess. This is weird. I need a Mac expert here just to walk me through all this. So I'm like, I'm gonna grab every single one of my video control panels and stuff and move it over here because it's not. Anyways, I'm just complaining. I should stop complaining. All right, here we go. So, oops. Okay, so if I do this now, oh, Izzy, no, please. Thank you. Okay, so if I do that, and then can I share the screen from here? Sorry, you guys are just having to go through the pain and suffering of watching me try to do this. Oh, click the share screen dialog and it shows up over there. Can I share that? Ta-da, maybe. I still have to check to see on the channel what it actually looks like when it comes out. So, all right, cool. I'm going to dive in then. I'm still just showing up in the corner. Let's see if I can fiddle with that for just 1 second. Why is it? Oh, there we go. Hide meeting? That help at all? Okay, and the streaming is lagging behind. Okay, we got like 20 minutes. So exciting, I know, Izzy. Pretty sure I need at least half an hour in advance just working with the particular setup. Okay, is this going to work now? All right. Okay, I'm just going to YOLO this. I'm going to smash a button, start going. Go through the slides, get the message across. Be like 15, 20 minutes. Oh, no, what? That should not happen when I just push a button somewhere. This is what I'm talking about. All right, here we go. Okay. It's so weird that it does that. All right. Quick audio check. Usually takes a minute before it actually goes live. Well, it starts going live before it actually gives you the confirmation that it's live. So I'm probably live right now. All right, we are live. Okay, welcome. I'm Seth Stewart. I'm running for Congress in Congressional District 4, and I just wanted to do this presentation in honor of Tax Day today, on just how we can overcome our biggest forms of taxation, including notably inflation and various other unconstitutional forms of taxation. And it turns out that we're not just powerless little pitiable creatures at the mercy of the creature from Jekyll Island. There are actually things we can do to hedge against inflation. And so there's going to be a practical component to this. There's something that people in Congress can and should do about inflation, and there's something that ordinary people can and should do about inflation and other various forms of taxation. So we're going to go ahead and go into some of that. Just doing a quick audio check here. Yep, audio's coming through. Okay, cool. Thank you. All right. So for starters, yes, the solution to inflation is in the Constitution. And I was just talking with my good friend Mark here about how a lot of the reason why we get accustomed to things as they are today in their horribly corrupt and decrepit state is just because that's the world we were born into. And so we think it's normal. A lot of people's definition of constitutional is basically whatever I grew up with. And that unfortunately has too much become conservative values in a nutshell, that we're just chasing after this thing and we don't even know what the thing is because we never got around to defining it or understanding what it really is at the origin. So it's vitally important that we turn our hearts to our fathers, at least in the sense of understanding things that they understood and knew, and perhaps even took for granted that nobody needs to be told this because it's common sense, right? So I'm going to be talking some common sense here. And there we go. There we go. All right. So this slide right here is just a quick health check on our Constitution. I ask people this question, and on each of our issues, we're going to try to get quantitative on it. We can go with like gut feel on some stuff, but if there are numbers to back things up, I try to do that. Any estimates on how intact our Constitution is when it comes to taxation?
Oh, yeah, it's nearly dead.
Nearly dead. All right. Sounds like Miracle Max, it's only mostly dead, but slightly alive, right? Yeah, so our friend the Constitution here is indeed only mostly dead, but he is mostly dead. And we're gonna figure out exactly what his health bar is at and what weapons have been deployed against it and what remains and what we can do. So yeah, when it comes to taxation, this is a fun little game right here. That yellow thing on the screen, probably most of us have never seen in our lifetimes, because in 1933, the federal government thought it would be a really good idea to just take all of them and offer people pieces of paper instead. 1933, they confiscated the gold. And 1934, they issued an order confiscating silver. Uh-oh. Okay, there's a huge problem already because our own Constitution says you can't do that. It literally says you cannot do that. And for some reason, every time I try to bring this up, the people in power just like don't care. And we need to figure out, how do we get them to care? And how do we get ourselves to care more about it and realize our situation and do the things that will be effective in hedging against that? Just one quick example here. When I was a delegate in 2022, I was a state delegate, and I was vetting John Curtis, who was up for election in Congressional District 3, and this was before the redistricting age of late. And I just asked him, what are you going to do about the Federal Reserve? Are you going to hold them accountable for being a counterfeiting agency? Are you going to return to Article 1, Section 10 currency? And he hemmed and he hawed and he claimed not to understand the question. And or that the Republicans don't have enough of a majority to do that right now. I'm like, well, they've had a majority how many times over the past few decades? Have they just not been aware of this issue? I think awareness is part of it, because you can totally have somebody elected to Congress who doesn't even know that Article 1, Section 10 exists. or as far as what it says about our currency and what that implies. We might have read the document dozens of times, but still not put two and two together about, okay, but what does that mean for us? And so one of my favorite tactics is just to take a look at what we do today, what everyone thinks is normal, and just compare it to what the Constitution says. I think that's a great study plan for the Constitution. What do we do with currency? What do we do with taxes? What does the Constitution say about that? And is there any mismatch? And if there are mismatches, then you go and be the gadfly and you start asking questions about it. So I started asking questions about this, and it will take you places. Let me tell you what. But maybe I should show this. There's actually just to maybe I'll summon this as a second witness. But if you look at gold and silver prices, I think I'll have some proof for what I'm about to say to you here. But of the three things on this image right here, two of them are real money, and the one down here is fake. Federal Reserve note, promissory note, aka IOU, dollar bill, bill of credit. More or less, people will argue about the semantics of those terms, but the truth is, this piece of paper is nothing but an IOU, and you're just taking their word for it that this has value. Goodness knows how much value, but it's always decreasing, and that's the primary point. And if we want to do just a head-to-head here as well, this is actually a plank of the Communist Manifesto. Paper currency, a certificate, what they called it. They said every day at the end of the worker's shift or every pay period or whatever, he goes home with a certificate so that he can buy enough bread to survive until tomorrow and then come back and do the same thing over again. So living paycheck to paycheck. This is literally described in the writings of the founders of Marxism.
To keep them alive and able to actually build wealth.
That's correct. The accumulation of wealth is expressly forbidden in private hands, private, not centrally government consolidated hands. The abolition of all private property is indeed expressly the objective of Marxism. And so you can't abolish private property unless you can actually take it away and then, in this case, offer something paltry of no value as a substitute for it. We are going to go over some numbers and stats, though, as to the effect that this inflationary currency system has had on us. Because the Federal Reserve was established in 1913. And then and another really important thing, actually, about the 16th Amendment, which paved the way for the Federal Reserve, is that it also did away with the Constitution's prohibition on all direct taxes outside of a census tax. And this is kind of foreign territory for us. So I'm just going to give a brief outline of the tax methods as well. The Constitution originally only allowed 4 methods of taxation. There was a census tax. In other words, you just pay a flat amount just for being an adult human being. And that was collected through the states. And then there are 3 indirect taxes. It's imposts, excises, and duties, which translated into modern language are roughly tariffs and luxury item sales taxes or something like that. So, so you have that handful, not even a handful of legitimate taxes that the Constitution originally said. And one of the things that a lot of people maybe don't realize about the 16th Amendment is that it just completely blew the lid off of direct taxes to where, and it also allowed the government to levy taxes without apportionment. So in other words, to tax in a manner that is not bound to your personhood. They could be bound to literally anything else they want. So that means they could now tax anything. They could tax literally anything and call it legitimate because thanks to the 16th Amendment. And hence we have property taxes, we have inheritance taxes, we have sales taxes on everything, we have climate indulgences, taxes. We have yeah, well, we have so health insurance mandates are a form of tax. The Sibelius versus National Federation of Independent, whatever, I forget, NFIB. In 2012, that was when Obamacare was challenged in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, well, we can't actually justify this using the Commerce Clause, so it's a tax, right? And so at least they're being like semi-honest about it, but it's also like it is still not pursuant to any enumerated power. And the really clear thing that we should see about all these forms of taxes is that they're just socialism. It's literally just socialism. Insurance mandates, subsidies, et cetera. It's just creeping socialism. But it's only a little bit, and so it can't possibly be socialism, right? We get that argument all the time. But anyway, suffice it to say, we need to reclaim these two precious metal objects on the top if we're ever going to uh, stop the flood of cheapo currency and devaluation of our currency. And so one question now is, any estimates as to the valuation of the dollar today? What is the dollar worth today versus when the Federal Reserve was created?
Oh, 99.8% of the value has been inflated away since the,
Since the Federal Reserve was created. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take that as legal tender. And yeah, I think it's a very good estimate. Interestingly, when I talk with people about the status of our rights, they'll give estimates like often it's like 15% or something like that. But yeah, in the case of, oh, there's one more thing I should mention about gold and silver and why those were confiscated is because even if the government could print an infinite amount of funny money, as long as there are a sizable proportion of the people who are using real money, then there's only so much wealth they can steal using inflation if you don't accept the funny money. And so that's a key. That's something we need to remember, bear in mind for how to solve this problem, which is why 20 years after the Federal Reserve was created, they did the gold and silver confiscations. Because they're like, hey, we're not able to steal enough money from you guys because you're too smart and you still know what real money is and you're hanging on to it. Oh, you're not allowed to own stuff. Come on.
Having the market dynamics like to be able to pull on instead of a monopoly on the actual types of money and allowed.
That's right. Yeah. So the government stole our trust because money ultimately is it's a form of trust, right? It says we trust you because you've provided this much service to society, and therefore society owes you this much in return. And if the government can steal that, then they're just laundering trust. But just moving forward, there we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to use an official figure because the Consumer Price Index, which is a cobbled together assortment of metrics that recently changed during the pandemic to conceal how much money the Federal Reserve was printing. But technically, it's the Bureau of Engraving and Printing enabled by the Federal Reserve. But less than 3% of the dollar's value has been retained since 97%. And that's only the part that they're telling us about, because this is why they only estimate, and this is why you can't audit the Fed, right? But this is something that we can do. This is something we can do in public policy and in public venues, public spaces, is because it has become fashionable to use hashtag audit the Fed. Elon Musk is big on that. He's never going to do it because you can't audit the Fed. It's unaccountable. Like they're a book cooking organization by very nature, by their charter. They're supposed to cheat. They're supposed to lie. They're supposed to steal. They're supposed to falsify records. That was their commission from Congress, and that's what they've been doing. And so holding them accountable, good luck. But what you can do is, sure, you could say audit the Fed. But this is part of the problem that's inherent in the very nature of inflation, is that neither you nor I can falsify the existence of, some hundreds or thousands of pallets full of cash nominally valued at trillions of dollars in some warehouse somewhere. Somebody comes forward, whistleblower says that's the case. I'm like, I can't prove you wrong. If somebody said that much gold existed in a warehouse somewhere, I'd be interested. I'd be like, intriguing. That sounds unusual, right? That sounds implausible, in fact, because gold is inherently difficult to extract. But yeah, and Elon Musk bragged about this with Doge finding these computers where he said they literally had this field where you just type in a number and that much magic money just poof appears somewhere. And yep, and this has been fueling our housing crisis because we have these Federal Reserve connected, supposedly private investor organizations like BlackRock and Vanguard and what was the other something Street? Anyways, I'm not remembering the name of the organizations, but organizations that have heavily invested in and bankrolled Elon Musk. Actually, they're the number one private investors, the angel investors. So, but this is what our enemy likes to do: is he likes to diversify his holdings and his stealings. and steal things through a variety of different channels. And that way, there's always a mask of plausible deniability. And we'll find that if you want to do the exercise to estimate your effective tax burden, I'm going to remind me at the end, and I'll tell you what I estimated my effective tax burden using real world numbers is towards the end here. So, but begin thinking about that, just how much my true real world estimate is that it's closer to 1%. But even using official figures, if you plug these numbers into an inflation calculator where the interest compounds over time, and even without compounding, right? So there's a compounding. The reason I bring compounding interest up is because inflation does compound over time, which is one of the reasons why the only way to hang on to money is to put it into like a high return investment account. Something that will give you big ROI that just exceeds the actual inflation rate. And that's the only way that you can even hold on to your money. So you have some portfolio that gives you, good, safe 5% annualized rate of return. And then big if, the annualized inflation rate stays, well below that, then in theory, you're still making money. But if the true inflation rate is at or near or slightly over or way over 5%, then you're still not even hanging on to your value, even though you tried really hard to go find a good fund to invest in and did all the work and you're being productive with it and being responsible. So it is literally just a theft instrument, but it gets very pernicious. So oh, this is fun. All right, founding father quote, gratuitous right here. Paper is poverty. It is only the ghost of money and not money itself. What a good phrase. I love that so much. And so I want a bumper sticker of this, except it's too much text for a bumper sticker. But somehow we need to bumper sticker into our brains that think of that. It's just a ghost. It's what your savings once were. And oh, you wanted to comment?
Kind of simplify it to paper equal poverty and maybe a ghost image in the corner and then just showing the ghost of money. It's like another image somewhere amongst those words.
There we go. Yeah, you could totally memify this with a pile of real cash, giving up the ghosts and all these paper bills spewing out or something. Yeah, power of the press, right? Um, but yeah, and this is why it is. And one of the things that's just really honestly sad, and we need to arm and equip ourselves against is like I hear people trying to justify paper money under all sorts of like really just honestly dumb rationales like, oh, but like gold and silver weigh a lot. Like you don't want to go around like carrying actual money in your pockets to pay for stuff. Cause I mean, you'd have to like carry a wheelbarrow into the grocery store just to buy your groceries. And I'm like, excuse me. Yeah. So you got is that a little gold back or something?
This is a quarter back.
Quarter gold back. All right. Interesting.
The Idaho series, the first series.
All right.
The quarter gold back.
The quarter gold back. So is this worth like what, $2.50-ish right now?
Yeah, it's close to $3.
Close to $3. All right, yeah. Yeah, and that's important. We're gonna get into gold and its valuation. But I wanna be respectful of the room time here. But yeah, so this is one of the reasons why the government keeps on spending unaccountably is because we don't even see it. It's invisible. Since it's so ghostly, it can just pass through walls at will. It can just evaporate and it's just gone. And so you can't even hold on to it. And this is one of the things I think that just unplugging the Federal Reserve, like right now, overnight, this is one of the government programs I have no issue with just quitting cold turkey and determined to do everything I can to make that happen if I get in a position where I can do anything in that department. Is there's no downside to just stopping that because they're just sapping your wealth, they're just stealing from you. And if you do require the government to receive its tax money in gold and silver coin, then you actually see it leaving your hands. You feel it and you're like, but I could have built a brand new gazebo with that, right? You actually mentally process the fact that what is yours is now being outsourced. And I think this would do far more to curb unaccountable spending and taxation than just about anything else we could do. Exactly. It's not just some ethereal thing, some blip, some electrons moving down a wire. and electricity, and some physicist will correct me here. But all right, so we could look at charts for like gold prices and stuff, but I'll just leave this as a research assignment because it is fairly depressing. But the gold price right now, so here, let me go. Yeah, I can show you some here actually. So I did a little bit of investing lately. And here we go. This it's like savings, right? So this right here, that is a $20 piece pre-1933. Do you know how much $20 from 1933 in mostly gold? It's like 90% gold, 10% copper. Today's currency, what is that worth?
How many ounces is that?
That is 1 ounce.
Yeah. Should be just under 5,000.
Yeah, it's roughly $5,000. So if you go by that metric, then what's the effective inflation rate since then?
Yeah, 20 to 5,000. Definitely less than 1%.
Yeah, it's more than 25-fold inflation, right? And it's still just being run away. And there are a lot of things that can mask. So gold and silver don't exactly track inflation, but they're a useful metric because that used to be $20. So anyways, we should really think hard about those things and just like do what we can to debunk these really ridiculous arguments. I was going to say like to answer the concern that, oh, well, money is too heavy to carry around. I'm like, no, I could still, even with today's ridiculously inflated housing prices, I could still buy a nice house for a pocket full of gold. I could still totally do that. And I could still go to the grocery store and just have like, here are 2 silver coins for this entire basket, right? I can still totally do that. So yeah, and then there's the notion of like, oh, but if you're carrying it around, someone might try to steal it from you. I'm like, well, I'd prefer that to like somebody in a bank trying to like actually stealing it from me because he's got the armed guards to keep me out of my money now.
Yeah. And that argument didn't stop robbers from stealing paper money from people.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. There's still people who go around, oh, there's a $100 bill in your pocket. Well, I'll take that, right? Because and so I'm going to go ahead and have a call to action right here, and that is that you insulate yourself against funny money. And I'm not here to sell you gold. I'm not here to sell you silver. I'm not here to sell you gold blacks or any of that stuff. But it is just an objective fact that precious metals, you can't inflate. Like people say, oh, what if we get a whole bunch of gold from an asteroid or something? Like, okay, then the semiconductor, industry will do really well, because it's an industrial commodity, right? It has intrinsic value. And Aristotle has a really great essay if you want to do a deeper dive on this, on the 4 attributes of money. And like almost the only things that satisfy his 4 intrinsic attributes are gold and silver. I will give you some investment advice right here. Crypto is trash. Hate to say it, but people say that it is a decentralized currency. That's not true. It is extremely concentrated, and that is because cryptocurrency depends on bleeding edge semiconductor manufacturing. You need some kind of GPUs or application-specific integrated circuits like the Bitcoin miner machines in order to be able to create Bitcoin. And what that results in is whoever has the bleeding edge nanofabs for that technology, they get cheapo access to it. And this is one of the reasons why I disagreed with Donald Trump on his tariffs. Tariffs, even though they are a constitutional form of taxation, can be abused. And I think we need more safeguards against that, because I noticed this as a machine learning researcher. I needed to purchase GPUs for my own use for research. And during the pandemic, there were supply chain shortages, but there was also markup, very big markup on our own product that was being manufactured overseas. So the GPUs are designed in the United States, and we ship that tech. We just hand the technology on a silver platter to these countries in East Asia, and then they mass produce the things. And then we are taxing ourselves to import our own product. That's what the tariff is. I'm paying money. I pay more money than a Chinese national would for our own technology, our own bleeding edge technology. And there was a big shortage of GPUs during that time, which means that there were these massive GPU farms, making goodness knows how much money just mining crypto during the pandemic. While the gamers in the United States were like, I can't even get one. And there's this, research student who's like, hey, I need this for my genetics research or whatever. So we can't even access our own technology when tariffs are misused. But so just a little tidbit here. Gold and silver, they're gold and silver for a reason. These are gold, silver standard. And it's more than just having your money backed by it.
I mean, don't, depend on the internet being.
That's right. That's right. And the blockchain is in theory peer-to-peer or a mesh topology or whatever. But even that's vulnerable to state actors and attacks by them. And I also didn't mention that crypto relies on cheap electricity, which you don't always have. State actors do when they want it. So yeah, if you want things that are durable, I recommend these, but I will also recommend just home food storage. And this is what we have been forewarned of, by the example of Joseph in Egypt and on other occasions. You can't eat gold or silver, but you can eat wheat, and it keeps for literal decades. I've eaten 70-year-old wheat before, and it wasn't. That wheat was maybe less than ideal. So it had been kept in these vegetable oil cans, and anyway. But 30-year-old wheat, I had some of that, and it tasted like it had been canned yesterday. So, so that's a lot of wealth.
Any affinity for precious metals that are in a particular form?
In a particular form, for me personally, I prefer coinage because that's
I was kind of facetiously giving that precious metals that can be used for supplemental purposes.
Oh, well, I mean, there are high technology applications for gold and silver there, but are you just referring to lead as a precious metal, basically?
Steel.
Steel. Yeah. Yeah. Well, steel is a precious metal in the sense that it's like it's a post-Iron Age technology, right? So the ability to manufacture things is actually one of your greatest safeguards against inflation, because suppose we have some kind of a mark of the beast system ushered in tomorrow, 100% plausible based on, well, it's currently like already mostly there actually. Based on what I've observed in our state legislature and nationally and so on. And this is not like religious speculation or anything. This is like, no, I'm just looking at the fruits. I'm just observing what they're doing. And this is what they're doing, is they're making it extremely difficult for people to buy, sell, or even trade in many instances. They're making it very difficult to produce and to retain the value of what you've produced. So that any of those things by itself would be, like, in a nutshell, catastrophic, and we're already there. So, but yeah, because here's the thing, if we don't need to buy stuff, then in theory, at least that far, inflation will be not needed. But of course, the government, even if you don't earn anything, you don't spend anything, the government still taxes what you have, property taxes, for public schools, which are also a plank of the Communist Manifesto. So they're stealing your money and your means, which you need to survive, to indoctrinate your kids against you, to steal your stuff. So, oh man, all right. Yes, because they'll have.
Most of it. I will say that it's not as egregious when it's a tax on the value of the location that you are monopolizing, it's just something, but what you have built with your own hands should be something that you can consider as part of ownership, free and clear, someone else's claim on ownership.
It should be fully free and clear. And the only claim that anyone else can have on your land is your posterity. Your posterity have a right to your land after you pass on. Yeah. That's inheritance. That's the law of inheritance. And actually the Jews actually have something really tremendous to teach us here. Jubilee. Where even if you fell upon hard times and you leased out your land, because if you even sold your land to someone else because you're like, hey, I can't even afford bread, and I can't afford to be a landowner anymore or whatever, you sell your land, and then on the year of Jubilee, which is every 50th year, so 49 years and then 1 year of Jubilee, that land returns to you. So according to the Lord's own standard in the scriptures, you cannot permanently disinherit yourself from the land. It's not possible. But the Marxist way is the exact opposite. The socialist communist syndicate says you don't even have a right to exist on this land. And because if you don't have a right to your land, then you don't have a right to exist, period. Because where are you going to go? Oh, we'll go to the moon. Well, they're going to land on the moon, colonize that too, and tax you there too. Going to go to Mars? We'll tax you. They'll find you. They'll tax you. All right. So I don't worship gold or silver. It's just a mathematical, physical, logical, hard fact that they can't be inflated, but this other stuff can. And yeah, so this is my campaign platform when it comes to the Federal Reserve and the Fed. That simple. Don't audit the Fed. There's nothing to audit. Just end it. Just pull the plug on it. Just admit that they're a counterfeiting agency and hold them accountable for it. Stop it. So we got another little fun thing here, and this is how you can actually end the Fed locally, starting in your own towns, your own cities, your own states and neighborhoods. Something I ran into that Joseph Smith just kind of offhandedly said once upon a time about money. I'm just going to read you this quote. So good. Okay. Situated as we are with a flood of immigration constantly pouring in upon us, I consider that it is not only prudential, but absolutely necessary to protect the inhabitants of this city from being imposed upon by a spurious currency. Okay. So it's pre-Federal Reserve era, and they were still being threatened with spurious. Yeah, there we go. So there were all these certificates floating around regardless, right? Many of our Eastern and Old Country friends are altogether unacquainted with the situation of the banks in this region of country, and as they generally bring specie, that is money, with them, they are perpetually in danger of being gold by speculators. Besides, there is so much uncertainty in the solvency of the best of banks that I think it much safer to go upon the hard money system altogether. So what he's saying is there are people here among the saints who have real money with them, and then there are these speculators who come by and say, hey, will you want this for that? Will you trade me this for that? And what they're trading them has no value. And so he says, just stick with real money. Just stick with hard assets. That's right, the gold and silver. But it gets better. Listen to this. Okay. I have examined the Constitution upon this subject and find my doubts removed. The Constitution is not a law, but it empowers the people to make laws. For instance, the Constitution that governs the land of Iowa, but it is not a law for the people. The Constitution tells us what shall not be a lawful tender, which is what shall not be is exactly what we use today. Article 1, Section 10 declares that nothing else except gold and silver shall be lawful tender. This not saying that gold and silver shall be lawful tender. It only provides that the state may make a law to make gold and silver lawful tender. So if you wanted to understand federalism and so-called states' rights through the proper lens, this is a worked example of it. Saying the Constitution gives you the latitude to do that. It doesn't prescribe. Well, the federal Constitution governs land. Let's see. I believe he's referring to the federal Constitution here. I haven't read the Constitution of Iowa on the topic but also he says something about Illinois a little bit later on. But okay. But yes, this is Article 1, Section 10 in the United States Constitution says this, right? And it provides that the states can do that.
So you just referenced Iowa as just the location they are in, the society is speaking of.
Right.
But he's still referencing federal constitutions in this particular.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I know of no state in the Union that has passed such a law. Interesting. The Constitution flew those doors open to you, and no one's staking a claim. So it's really important actually to stake a claim here. Make a statement, pass a law, because then you can't be gold by these speculators. So he says, I know of no state in the Union that's passed such a law, and I'm sure that Illinois has not. The legislature has ceded up to us the privilege of enacting such laws as are not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States and the state of Illinois, and we stand in the same relation to the state as the state does to the Union, right? So you're governed by your state and national constitutions, but you can work within that framework. The clause referred to in the Constitution is for the legislature. It is not a law for the people. So it should leave the people unbound in theory, right? But it should bind the states. I'll pause here real quick. I've heard the argument that, oh, but the federal government can use whatever it wants because Article 1, Section 10 only says that no state shall make anything but that. And it's like, well, then how can the federal government do it? How can they spend it in any state if the states, they could not force you to accept stuff that isn't real money in the states if the states would just man up and pass a law that says gold and or silver be our law. The different states and even Congress itself have passed many laws diametrically contrary to the Constitution of the United States. And for that, you'll want to tune in tomorrow while I do a debrief on the legislative sessions for the past 2 years in the state of Utah, what they've been up to. I can vouch for that. The state of Illinois has passed a stay law making property a lawful tender for the payment of debts. And if we have no law on the subject, we must be governed by it. Shall we be such fools as to be governed by its laws, which are unconstitutional? Isn't that interesting? So Illinois passed this law that says, hey, you can use chickens as currency or whatever. I don't know what the law actually said, but like it's in property, okay? Or maybe land even, right? No, we will make a law for gold and silver, and then the state law ceases, and we can collect our debts. Isn't that cool? Powers not delegated to the states or reserved from the states are constitutional. The Constitution acknowledges that the people have all power not reserved to itself. I got asked a question earlier today if I'm a lawyer. I got asked that same question last night. I will let Joseph Smith answer for me. My answer is his answer. I am a lawyer. I'm a big lawyer and comprehend heaven, earth, and hell to bring forth knowledge that shall cover up all lawyers, doctors, and other big bodies. This is the doctrine of the Constitution, so help me God. Yes, I'm a lawyer because the Constitution enables me to be a lawyer and it does not forbid anyone to practice law. It does not allow for it to be licensed. So the government can't do that. That's right. It doesn't even authorize that as a prerequisite or a precondition to being admitted into a court of law. The Constitution is not law to us, but makes provision for us whereby we can make laws. Where it provides that no one shall be hindered from worshiping God according to his conscience is law. No legislature can enact a law to prohibit it. Whoops, that's what they've been doing. And that goes all the way back to the founding of Utah's statehood. The Constitution provides to regulate bodies of men and not individuals.
Just wanted to know your presentation serves until 7:15.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you. All right, we got to wrap up. Okay, yes, we are in fact over time. Yes. Okay, so this is what I'm urging us to do then is you can move upon, you can urge your city council to pass a municipal ordinance that says, hey, gold is our official currency here. You can't make us accept anything but that. And the federal government has to respect that, as does the state or gold and silver. So yeah, theft is theft. And inflation is theft. Not all taxation is theft, but inflation is theft. And if you want my back of the envelope candid estimate for what my effective tax burden was last year, it's roughly 66.6% of every dollar that my employer paid in personnel costs alone to me as a person just got usurped by the governments. 2/3. Yep. That is how far we are gone, even in the present, without the compounding, without I did figure in a modest inflation figure into that, but not an excessive one. So, all right. The Federal Reserve tax. Well, thank you very much. I've got a lot more to say on this about how the government actually conceals a lot of taxes. Like many people probably don't know that their payroll taxes are actually twice what your pay stubs say they are. So an example, Social Security and Medicare, I think are collectively 7% almost on our usual on your pay stub. But what you don't realize most of the time is that they actually make your employer pay the exact same amount before you even get your gross pay. So you're double paid. And this is a theme with the way the government takes away your rights, is that they'll target a minority that they know doesn't have a very big voice on the public stage, and they'll oppress that minority. And because their voice isn't very loud, yeah, there we go. And so they're just gonna, but that's your money and they're stealing it. and it is theft because it's not pursuant to any enumerated power. Socialism is not pursuant to any enumerated power. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for attending. And please feel free to drop me any questions.
So if we were to try to get a city here in Utah to pass a law about legalizing gold and or silver as tender. This would be for the sake of considering it payable for debts and taxes that are due to the city of, you know, whatever this may, when I'm gonna play the tax county, there's a portion that's going to the city.
Uh-huh.
Would it be that the city would just be saying that our portion of the property tax could be payable through is older silver that might be acquired in that property tax process?
You could do that. I mean, I abominate property taxes because, again, not pursuant to any weird power, but whatever taxes they might justifiably exact, they could require to be paid in gold or silver. Which could be actually a great way to get the people familiar with it, because if it's a government directive that your taxes have to be paid in gold or silver, I think that's brilliant, actually. Because there are a lot of people who have cold feet about it just because they're like, I'm not even familiar with this substance. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to use it. And it's like, well, if you have an official framework that demands it, then people will get used to carrying it and using it.